What is up, everybody? Welcome to a Pretty Perspective podcast.
A place where we bring light to hard shit. How do you know if you're actually healing or if you've gotten addicted to the process of healing itself? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a pattern that traps a lot of smart, sensitive, high-achieving people, getting stuck in the loop of, I'm not ready yet. I just need to do one more thing, then I'll be whole. If that hits home, you're not alone. We've been there. And this space, it's about helping you reclaim your life. We're here to give you real tools, deep clarity, not just another reason to stay in the waiting room of your own life. So if you're ready to stop healing as an identity and start healing as an integration, you're in the right space. And if you feel a little called out already, good. Stay tuned.
Yay. Yeah, so our topic today is healing versus addiction cycles. So really cool intro. We want to work on giving you guys tools and stuff when you listen to us and have something to take from something to take away from what it is that we're talking about. Because, I think we created this podcast to have a different perspective for a lot of different people. We're two different people who meet each other in different ways and they're getting to know each other. So healing versus the addiction cycle, interesting topic just for myself because I think I started really getting into healing like during COVID, right? And we had time to slow down, look into affirmations, looking into words, looking into how we talk to ourselves, looking into how we talk to other people. I think this is a common point to start from when your healing becomes your identity and you're not really, man, it's hard to not sound like I'm putting people down, but I'll just say it how it is. When you're not really moving through the healing, but you're doing it more as like a curriculum,
Mm.
right? And so when it becomes a curriculum, it's easy to put a box around it and what I like to call like barking at people. So it's like when I first started getting into healing, my identity through it was you're doing it wrong because you haven't tried this, or cramming it down people's throats about what I had just learned, or, and I think we dismiss the work that it is that we're doing when we do that. Because if I'm shoving it down your throat, I'm not actually applying it myself into the integration. If I am applying it myself, I'm actually going to be able to hear you when you're talking and know that you're not there yet and just let it be. You're shaking your head, yes, very intently. So, what do you have to say about that?
I think one thing we want to like fill everyone in on is like ways to catch yourself. So
Mm,
if you potentially are stuck in the healing addiction, we want to leave you guys with ways to be able to catch yourself, okay? And
mhm.
so there was other ways I've caught myself previous to this, but a more recent way I've caught myself is that I was so deep into healing and like personal development and stuff that if somebody else said something and they weren't where I was, like you just said, I would get like turned off by them. Like I would have like
Yes.
physical reaction to their lack of whatever, not even their lack of, just the fact that they weren't on the same page as me. And I would feel like physically turned off by it, and I would have a really hard time responding to them. And when I would catch myself doing that, and I was like, there's something not right about that. Like, why is that feeling happening to me? That's rude. Like, it's not that deep. Like, I'm me, they're them, like blah blah blah. And even to people that I just like wasn't close with. That's when I really caught myself. I'm like, me and this person have no true relationship. We're just peers or acquaintances. Why am I having this physical reaction to them saying this? And so that was a big wake up call for me to realize, like, hey, like, you are addicted to the work you're doing on yourself so much so that it's getting in the way of you having casual day-to-day conversations with people, or it's keeping you away from being a safe space for people to come to as well. And in the line of work that I've always been in, I've always been somebody who's in a line of work of helping others, whether it was when I was in retail or whether I was a leader, a manager, or now as a coach. I can't be dismissive or turned off when somebody comes to me and talks about something that doesn't align. Does that make sense? That doesn't align with where I'm currently at. So that was a huge wake up call for me. And that's why I was very much like,
Yeah, because I think what you're talking about without knowing that it's what you're talking about is a superiority complex.
yeah,
Yeah.
awkward,
And,
blushing.
and oh my God, but you know what though? Thank goodness you're doing that now instead of at 30 something years old, 50 something years old, 60 something years old, because I mean, that's just a big indicator of how much you have not worked on yourself like your whole life, you know? Um, but yeah, and to dilute it a little bit more for everybody who's listening to it, we do this a lot, and it comes from a place that we think, uh, it starts from a place, I would assume, like, but if we're all good people and we all have that general consensus of whatever, it comes from wanting to help people. So
Yes.
it's tricky, right? You and I could be having a conversation and we get into that space where I say something to you and you're just like, really? I don't, it is so obvious to me that what you just said isn't where I'm at. And so now I somehow think that unsolicited advice to you is going to get you to where I'm at.
Right.
What? What? That's not how it works. You know what actually works? And I've in the last like couple of days, I've been experimenting on my clients and stuff with like how dialogue and whatever flows. So I've been practicing being quiet, and everybody's everybody's really freaked out about it. But you know what it actually did the other day? I had a client, we were so I meet my clients where they're at energetically every day. I can feel when they come in, how they are, where they're at, whatever. So when I can tell that they're in some kind of place, I give them their own agency and I say, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you at today? 1, you can't lift your arms up. 10, you could move all day and it won't even bother you, right? So one of my clients she's carrying something and we get into a lift and I'm like, okay, what's the amount of energy on that same scale that you're willing to put out with this workout today? Congratulations for showing up, but what can we give it, right? What's 100% of what we can give it? So she's in the middle of this lift and she's trying to tell me that she's feeling like it's like a 7, but her body's moving like it's feeling like it's a 3. So I put some weight on and she sees it and she freaks out and she's like, that's going to be like a 10. I'm like, so personally for me as a trainer, I have a filter on when I'm with you. Like, I know that you can do more than you think you can.
Yeah,
So
totally.
I'm always going to challenge that, right? But this time, I didn't say a word. I took the weight off to where they thought it would be, their number it was that we were looking for. And we got into it, and she was like, we got like third rep in, and I knew it. I knew she was going to say this. She goes, oh, well, this feels like a 3 or a 4. And I go, yeah, I know. I knew you were going to say that. And she goes, honestly, I'm shocked you didn't even say anything. And I go, because I knew you were going to figure it out on your own. If we're always stepping in, even in micro moments like that, to
Yeah.
fix somebody, we're actually doing them a disservice to them figuring out how to get out of being addicted and into the actual healing. So what we actually ended up doing was it was just like it was a repair of a psychological hole that she kept digging out, relying on me to give to her through that thing. Um, so I think that is connected to what you were saying as a coach, and take it even further away from being a coach, take it into like what you said, like a peer or an acquaintance or whatever it is. We are capable of impacting people if we stop and we listen to where that person is at. And then instead of, if you want to work through that superiority complex at the beginning of, you give whoever's in front of you the space to say what it is that they need to say. And then guess what? You used to be where they are. So
Yeah.
you can go ahead and grab a tool from a box or bag that you were already in and hand it to them, even though, you're on level 7, they're on level 4, whatever it may be. If you're at level 7 and you're not handing out your level 4, what are you doing?
Yeah. And I also think it's okay too, depending on who you're talking to and what they're looking for. Sometimes I feel like if we're addicted to the healing process and we're so wrapped up into it, we feel like everybody else has to be healing as well.
Oh my gosh.
There's going to be some people out there, guys, that just aren't ready to heal. And even if you give them your level 1 tool, they're not going to take it and you just wasted your energy. So it's really important to check in. Like I've started asking people. I used to think it'd be awkward to ask, and now I'm just asking people, are you just wanting me to listen or do you want me to reply? Like, do you just want me to like let you vent or like are you wanting advice? Because I used to, when I was addicted to healing, always first thing out of my mouth, well, you could blah blah blah, blah, would have you thought of it? And it's like sometimes it's not worth your own energy. And second of all, it might just dig that person deeper in a hole because they're just going to feel guilty that they're not going to take your tool and they're just going to, fall harder into like their pity cycle or whatever it is. Or they don't have the capacity to heal right now. And so sometimes it's okay to just not say anything.
Yeah, yeah. Asking people if they want advice or want a hug, that's a pretty common thing amongst like couples now when they want to listen to each other and, like, do you just need to get this off your chest? Or because I even find myself now, as often as I talk to like ChatGPT or out on my run or whatever it is, I actually find myself just wanting to transmit the things that are inside of me out, because that for me and for people who are built like me, I know some of y'all are built like Lindsay and I, sometimes it's just transmitting whatever it is out of us, and I will get done saying what I need to say, and ChatGPT again is a really good tool for that, because I'm throwing a word salad into a pattern tracking mirror. And so when I can see that pattern repeated back to me um in a cleaner way, cleaner meaning what I've just transmitted, let's say I'm talking to a human and not ChatGPT, but Lindsay could look at somebody or myself can look at somebody who's transmitting to us and say, what I hear you saying in that is this, right? I just so happen to utilize ChatGPT more for that. Because whatever you say, also keep in mind, is going to be biased based on your own perception and how you've lived your life. But it's important, yes, to make sure you and I do it a lot with each other. You do it more so with me because I'm not as present, I'm finding out, as most people. But, do you want to talk about this? Is it just on your mind? Is this just something that is just there that will run its course, or do you need to unload? And
I think
yes.
that's another thing too, as I was going to say, like sometimes you just need to transmit. So like sometimes if you're addicted to healing, you feel like, okay, like I have this feeling. I know where this feeling comes from. It's from XYZ. Now I need to do something with it, okay? But right, like that's a fair feeling. Like, yes, you need to do something with it. So then you go and tell someone about it. And if you're maybe in this addiction cycle, you might be looking for an immediate result or like an immediate outcome. Like, okay, well, I just went and talked to my friend because I'm supposed to let out my feelings, but nothing changed. So what am I doing? Like this is pointless. And it's like there's a difference between letting your feelings out looking for a result and just transmitting that energy to get it out of you because sometimes that's just what healing is. Sometimes healing is just letting go. Letting go of the feeling, speaking it out, letting that energy out, writing it down in a journal, praying, whatever. And the beautiful thing is usually that actually is going to come back around with a result eventually. But you can't be impatient. You have to just trust that the healing will come. And like that feeling of wanting to get it out is amazing. That's great. You should listen to that. But you can't expect to immediately feel changed or healed or expect your life to take a different turn immediately.
Well, especially if you're if you are depending on the person across the table from you to be reliant on the outcome of that healing. So what do I mean by that? I mean, man, this is a tricky topic, you guys, because there's just so many different ways to go about it. So I'll just keep going from my own lit self, I guess. The instant gratification of the healing that Lindsay just brought up doesn't exist.
Mm-mm.
And if you are being fed that it does or that it is achievable, you're being lied and sold to. I know this and I can speak to this from a personal standpoint because I have lived through many examples of this right now in my own life. I just had a conversation before we started doing this episode about, we have as multi potentialites, we've got these spinning plates that are always around us. So we've always got these like projects that are going. So what I'm learning is that I'm being told to slow down a lot. I don't need to start new projects. I don't need to start new things. What I need to do is let the things that I've started settle.
Mm.
And I need to let I need to let these open loops, spinning plates settle. And I need to be okay with some of the plates falling off because some of those plates that fall off were not meant for me. They were an idea that I thought I wanted, but I don't, or I don't have time for, or that's not a priority at the moment. Um, and being mindful of where other people are at in their own journey can actually help you slow down in your own to integrate that. Like I said earlier, maybe I don't know why numbers work for me, but maybe while I'm at level 4 and somebody else is at level 7, that person at level 7 might be interacting with me because they need to be reminded of what level 4 is because maybe they've forgotten. Because it's not this thing that happens where you check something off or whatever. That's the waiting that she's talking about, you guys, where it's like you have this light bulb go off and you're like, oh, okay, well, yay for me for that hard conversation. Cool, check that one off. But how sustainable is what you just did? And the only way it becomes sustainable is if you give it the space and the time to let it happen. It can't be forced. I don't know if somebody was on Huberman's podcast or what it was, but I heard somebody say one time, you cannot think yourself into a secured state. You have to give it space. You got to feel it. And like she said, sometimes when it transmits and it comes out, I'll tell people this in person all the time now because I think you probably experienced, yeah, you did. Well, when you were here and we were sitting having dinner at Culinary Dropout and I was like crying, but I'm looking at you while I'm crying, but I'm like, I'm totally fine. But but my body just needed to do what it needed to do. And for people who don't know how to do that for themselves or co-regulate even with another person at all, that's when we offer up unsolicited advice for healing because we are not comfortable holding somebody else's state that they are currently in. So we rush to fix it because we're uncomfortable. And then we actually end up making it about us and rather than being about them because we actually haven't done the healing because now we're in what? Oh, an addiction cycle to healing instead of actually doing the healing.
Yeah. You said something about how there's like if you're being told that somebody has a healing technique that is going to give you an immediate gratification or immediate healing, that you're being sold and you're being lied to. I 100% agree. And since our last podcast episode was with Jody, if you
Mm-hmm.
all want
Hi,
to
Jody.
if you guys all want to go to her episode with Tina, she had a breathwork ceremony leader on her podcast.
Cool.
And they do open mouth. Don't quote me on any of this. I listened to it last night and I was very emotional while I was listening to it. But they do like open mouth breathing, and people will have very, very intense realizations, awakenings, accepting, like whatever it is. Like they can have that. So that might look to you like an immediate healing, right? But it's not. She says a lot of times you're going to leave that breath work feeling so great, feeling so light, feeling amazing. But in 2 weeks, that shit's going to come back around and you're going to be like, oh, wait, what do I do with this now?
What do I do with it? How is it applicable? The first time I went to a breath work, the breath work ceremonies that I go to when I go, they're like 2 hours long.
Yeah.
And I remember getting out of it, and I actually had the opposite experience of that, where somebody was like, "How did it go?" And I was like, it rearranged everything inside of me, but like not in a good way. I was pissed off for like 2 weeks because
Mm.
it brought to the surface, it unearthed. I like to say this, I like to think of a bag when you shake it out from underneath dirt. It unearthed all of this anger and resentment at the time for my divorce that I never looked at or processed or transmitted. What did I do instead? I drank it away. I talked shit about the situation. I didn't actually look at it for what it was. I didn't honor it. I didn't honor him. I didn't honor me. I didn't honor anything about it. What I did was I ran to escaping it, thinking that it was healing, thinking that, for those of us listening or talking or whatever, who for those of us who've experienced a divorce and then chosen to be friends with that person, I would challenge you, not that I don't want you to have a relationship with that person, because I think it's important if it's important to you. But I would challenge you to look at that relationship and ask yourself, am I band-aiding this?
Mm.
Am I band-aiding this relationship that has transformed? Am I band-aiding it with friendship so that I can bypass grief? Or do I really want this person to be in my support house still? Most likely they probably aren't supposed to be there. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you need to eradicate. It just means that the purpose for which they were supposed to be in your life is complete now. And it needs space and it needs time and it needs, you know, honestly, I think it needs room for you to maybe revisit too. Some of these things that we try to heal from that I think we get stuck in. It's that feeling of, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I don't know why I can't stop. It's because we haven't given it enough time and space to even figure out what we need to do to replace that current flow of energy. I don't even like calling it good or bad. It's just, I posted something the other day. Your habits are stronger than your feelings. If your feelings were as strong as they needed to be to get you out of that habit, it would have done it already.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, and then two things that I struggle with would be, feeling guilty that I'm not doing the work, right? Like I go out and have a beer or something. I'm like, is this part of my spirituality? I got a human. I got to be somebody who eats sugar, who, I have certain friends that I will be like mildly catty with, and I'll literally be like, hey, since I know I can do this with you, I don't want to like, we can't be this prim and proper guiding light all the time, too, because guess what? You're the fucking mess, too.
That's part of healing.
Yes.
You are thinking that you're going to be coming out of healing as like this perfect, like no cracks, like just, this perfect picture of yourself. If you think that, you're definitely addicted to healing because once you have accepted healing, the continuum of healing, because it's forever, you'll know that like you will always have cracks, you're always going to have brokenness, you're always going to have things come back up. It's never going to be perfectly polished.
So to touch on maybe like I'll use Jody for example. I would, if we were having a conversation just about her and where we were all at, not as a comparison to compare ourselves to each other, but to talk about what different levels we're at, and where I'm going with this next point is that everybody we meet is at a different part of their journey. Usually because of the biological linear way that we live in this dimension. I got here before Lindsay, Jody got here before me, Lindsay got here before somebody she's helping. There's just this natural wisdom that comes with being on the planet longer than somebody else, right? So I want to talk to people who maybe are on the either on the threshold of being in or already in this space that you get into when you get far enough into healing, because it happens in cycles too. It's not something that just happens. You start at different octaves, just like at the gym, just in the healing, whatever. So there's a point in time where you have this like subconscious fear of who am I if I'm not always healing? Who am I if I'm not always trying to fix something within me? An example that I'll give that I think can be applied to other things. When I started doing this work really deeply, like you're talking about, stepping away from it, and what we're trying to say here was back in like October, right before my Spartan race. And I started healing, and there was a day where it dawned on me, and I'm like, oh my God, if I'm not if I'm not transmitting the pain I feel inside through these workouts because I'm healed, how am I going to continue being good at these workouts? Because where am I going to get my fuel from? And the high performer that I am, that's really scary
Yeah.
because in that moment, I learned and was hearing myself and realizing that uh, I was addicted to healing through working out.
Mm.
So that's what I also mean. Like, you can get stuck in chasing breakthroughs, chasing feeling good, just like somebody. This is why I don't believe in addiction. I believe in escaping things. This is why somebody chases the high of a substance. It's the same mother freaking thing, okay? And I, if that alone right there is challenging for you to wrap your mind around, then take that and run with it for a little bit, because I think healing versus addiction cycle, that word addiction is so stigmatized towards a substance alone that we don't realize. Well, I mean, food is a substance, but talking to people is a substance. It's called object meaning making theory. So somebody who's been through trauma will make something have meaning, and then they go to that thing to that's just their way of coping. So for me, it shifted from people to alcohol to the gym to now I'm having to balance all of what I just listed, because I don't let any one of those things have so much power over me that I don't do it,
Yeah.
right? Not everybody is built that way. You know yourself the best way that you know yourself, but I would challenge you to look at, are you holding on to the cycle that you're currently in simply for the totally normal and okay thought that you don't know who you are without it?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to say too to anyone listening that might feel that way, that might be afraid to move through their healing and to like let go of that, like Nova's saying with where am I going to get this drive in the gym if I move through this pain? And this is a bittersweet statement, but there's always going to be more pain coming. There's always
It's
going to
not ever going to stop.
Life is full of pain and struggle. So guess what? You work through the little stuff, even bigger shit is going to come your way, okay? Like it's
100%.
and if you can get through I think it's if you can get through what's in the past, that means you're going to open yourself up for more in the future, not only pain, but amazing things. And that's what we're all trying to heal for, right? We're all trying to heal so that we can have the energy and the space to accept more. And the good always comes with the bad. So there's always going to be more healing to do. And so like that's I think another reason why this topic's kind of hard to talk about, because it's like we're talking about not staying in a loop of healing, but we're also saying healing's always going to happen. And it's about working through one thing or a couple things at a time so that you can then, like I said, have space to accept more positive and more, I don't want to say positive and negative. You can accept more abundance and then you can also accept more shit. Like you'll
Well, this
it's gonna
shit's that's let me offer it up in like the terminology of like lessons or teacher. You can accept abundance while listening to a teacher.
right.
And I love this little theme that we've been having with since connecting spiritually. Scripture also says that pain is the sandpaper to sharp edges, right? So what does that mean? That means when we recognize someone else's pain or our own as a lesson that softens the edge that we feel like is cutting us through that pain. So I want to just keep driving home through this if people are listening. Like there is nothing good or bad. It's what you're going to do with it when it's in front of you. And to further the loop of like subconscious fear of like, who am I if I'm not healing, right? This is another thing that has happened to me that maybe somebody else has experienced, maybe even yourself. I will think that, okay, I'm going to step into this person who I'm going to find other fuel at the gym. Okay. So sometimes when we're healing, the ego is so tricky. God, the ego is so tricky, but it's such a funny little thing. We will think and try and step into this new person and we'll do it. We'll consciously make a decision. We'll be doing the thing. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves in a situation that's familiar, like eerily familiar to the thing it was that we were just getting away from. Because we're actually seeking out wounds to feed the addiction it is that we think we're walking away from. Because if we also think about addiction like this, we all know there's a general consensus that if somebody is detoxing, they're going to be really fucking uncomfortable. Excuse my language. They're going to be really uncomfortable, right? The same exact thing happens when you are healing. So I would find myself, and this just, we're going from subjective to objective in almost a full sentence. So when I know that I'm working on something, I'm still inside of the world that I created through the thing it is that I'm working myself out of, right? So if that is true, and if I am in that moment realizing it, then it has to be true that I'm still surrounded by the misaligned people that I built my life with, right? Okay, so if we're all following that, that means then I'm more likely than not gonna find myself in an endless processing loop, and I'm going to find myself around and or seeking the people that validate the thing it is I'm actually working through. So now I'm uncomfortable. Now I don't really know what to do because not only do I not have the thing that was helping me cope through this healing, which is working out, now I got to find new fuel for that. Now I have to also rebuild the community I have around me because I can't be around the same people that helped me build the loop I'm trying to get out of if I want to be in a different loop and then also have the loop be sustainable. It's not even about whether or not we're in it or out of it or in it or out of it, in it, out of it. It's once the loop is there and it's a healthy one, how do we keep that loop sustainable? And that is those micro movements that we do all day. How did I respond to Lindsay, even though I talk to her every day? Was I mindful? Was I, hey, how was your day? Or am I actively being involved in your or someone else's life by saying, I know that you're learning about the Bible. What did you learn about God today? What did you learn about zone 2 today? Did you learn anything new about high rocks? Like what if we're actively involving ourselves in each excuse me, in each other's lives, there won't even be room for that other stuff because that other stuff won't have a podium to stand at.
Mm. Yeah.
That was a lot, sorry.
So just to ask you a little bit more about you trying to kind of work your way out of like your the loop you found yourself in with using the gym as a coping mechanism.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think of how to ask this, but you're saying You're saying like the people, so how in that circumstance, because I think it's really clear for people to know like if alcohol, when alcohol or if alcohol was the thing that you were using to cope, it's very clear to understand why people who are around you then should not or might not have as much space in your life anymore because like that's an unhealthy addiction or whatever we want to say. But how do you see that same occurrence like with your community at the gym? Like, how does that show up in your life so maybe other people can recognize if that's happening to them as well?
So did you just ask me basically like how did I integrate the people at the gym after unintegrating or unconditioning myself from the people around me at the bar?
What I thought I heard you say is you're trying to unintegrate yourself with certain people at the gym that allowed you to.
Oh, no, good catch. No. What I mean by oh, okay, like you're asking about when I said when I moved from alcohol to the gym, right?
Yeah.
No. Oh.
I'm so when you were talking earlier about the fact that like you're using like that pain and that healing to fuel you in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned something about the community you've built in the gym and having to move different
Oh,
or move.
yeah, that was actually meant for like the people that was in the bar community.
Okay.
Like yep, that probably makes more sense that way. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, because the career that I built for myself through the bar industry and through hospitality was all validation driven.
Mm,
I just wanted somebody to see me, you know? Um, and so then that transitioned into every time I wanted to go drink, I would just go to the gym instead, right? It's the same thing. I'm just replacing that habit with something else. And then when it became about the people, I found myself feeling really lonely because you will. I mean, your circle gets pretty small when you start to heal because you protect your peace. You know what it is to actually give to another person. You know how taxing that is. But what turned me on to that in hospitality, or what illuminated that I needed to find a different support system, was that let's say we worked together for a long time and, I've said this a couple times, I bartended for like 10 years. You would think after 10 years you got some people in your life for real until you're like, yeah, I don't do that anymore. But if you want to come to the gym and work out, you know where I'll be. I've had several birthdays where I'm like, I'm not going out anymore because I used to be, the party. You know what I mean? Like it was like my birthday, where are we going? How ridiculous are we going to be, right? And so when you stop doing that, but everybody else around you is so used to you going big or going home, now I'm just doing it at the gym. But when people started not showing up at the gym, I thought, oh shit, they're stuck in the cycle that they're stuck in. I have stepped out of that, and now it's up to me to reintegrate some people that are on that same level.
yeah, that makes sense. I'm glad we kind of clarified that for everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It sucks though. It's hard. It's heavy. There's a lot of grieving that happens with all this because you build a life through a certain lens, and then eventually, if you're doing the work correctly, that lens has to come off. It
yeah.
has to.
And it's hard, but hopefully like you can't attach yourself to this. So I don't even know if I should say it.
Mm.
But your best hope is to completely detach from the people who can't accept your healing or come with you. And if it's meant to be, those people will come around again.
Well, they'll come around again, or in the wake of your maybe possible absence, people will step up. It's not often that that happens.
And you guys can't expect or wait for or hope for. You have to just completely let it go with the small thought like of maybe someday. And then you have to just move on because you can't change anybody, like we've said before. You can't change anybody. They have to want to change themselves, and you just have to worry about you as hard as it is.
Well, and when you get into this like healing thing, because there's like many different layers. That's why we have like, you know, That's why we have different doctors and different therapists. We've got therapists for inner family structures. We've got therapists for addiction. We've got therapists for many, 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 many different things. And so everything that we're talking about can be applied to somebody at the gym, can be applied to somebody with your family. It's just, you know, there is, gosh, how do I say this? Okay. There's a level of neutrality that will come out of you eventually that comes off as dismissive or insensitive to other people. But that dismissive and insensitive energy that other people are giving you or may give you is also an indication that you're doing everything right because they're not in a place to comfortably be able to accept that behavior because they don't even have the capacity yet to understand that that's what you're doing because they haven't looked at themselves enough to be comfortable with you doing it for your own self. Does that make sense?
Who's neutral, me or the person I'm talking to?
You like if you're always taking a neutral stance on things and you're staying indifferent unless it really means something to you or whatever. I mean,
Yeah, people cannot handle that. People cannot.
no.
That's where I find myself. That was another struggle for me and it still is. It's in a lot
Yeah.
of conversations. I'm just like, I'm very neutral, very unpolarized. I've mentioned that on this podcast before, and people cannot wrap their heads around it because they're so attached. And that's something I kind
The
of want.
reaction.
The reaction is a big thing too, but I wanted kind of to bring in another podcast I was listening to really quick. And I was listening to Ed Milet, and it was a podcast episode
Mhm.
about brainwashing. Very interesting. And it was taking, brainwashing techniques from like different wars and stuff like that, and how like the public or like the top 1% or whoever's controlling the government, how they use that against us and whatnot. But the one thing I took from that podcast that I think relates to this healing episode is when you get into healing and you're looking at resources, you're reading personal development books, you're watching YouTube videos about how to heal, or you're even going to a therapist or you're going to workshops or whatever. If you there's a difference between having the dialogue you heard or having the lessons you heard as like a little like file in your brain to pull from when needed. There's a difference between having the file to pull from versus you not even being able to think for yourself and you
Mhm.
just regurgitating the things that you've heard. So I think that's another way to catch yourself. Are you healing or are you addicted to healing? Are you actually using those files, applying them, integrating them into your own life, working through them, thinking through them, having your own thoughts about them, potentially questioning the techniques, potentially disagreeing with techniques? Or are you literally just reading the book and being like, okay, well, I read the book How to Do the Work and this is what it said. So, yep, I'm healed there. You know what I mean? Like,
That's where most people stop. They
exactly.
finish the book. They finish the book and then they're like, it's enough that I read it. So I have a question for you now. If there is one thing in your life that you talk about integrating or think about, but isn't or has not been integrated yet, and why?
So, something I came up with as a goal for 2025 in my personal development and in my personal goals is to have more intrinsic satisfaction and seek extrinsic satisfaction less. There's a lot of different things. This is going to, I hope my clients listen to this because I feel like think I'm like perfect, like whatever, but I'm literally so not. And anyways, I won't get too far deep into that, but um I'm pretty good at like sitting with myself and like I'm pretty good at like being bored and like whatever, but I always have to have something with me. Like I always like I've always been like when I'd go to high school, and I finally could drive myself. Like I always to go to school, I had to have an emotional support drink, a soda, a coffee, a whatever. Um, Something that I'm like so hesitant to share with everyone, but like something that I've always used as a coping mechanism is weed and smoking.
Mm.
And that's something that like I want to stop depending on. I don't think I want to stop doing it forever. Just like you said, I can go have a beer, doesn't mean I'm not healed, right? It's like I want to be able to be okay with just being clear-minded and
Yeah.
not look for some kind of like extrinsic.
Filling empty space.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's like sometimes I can and sometimes I can't. Or it's not can't. Like sometimes I'm successful in convincing myself otherwise. But sometimes I still go to these things that I want to like have with me. And like my boyfriend's really awesome about it. Like I'll be like, I'm gonna go get coffee. And he's like, why? And I'm like, because it's what I do. Like, and he's like, well, I'm gonna like, and he just leads by example. He's like, I'm just gonna like save my coffee for my workout tonight. And I'm like, that would make sense. Like using the caffeine to actually like
Cool, 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 cool. Glad I'm going to get this coffee for me.
still on my way to get the coffee. But it puts that thought in my head though of like, why do I need the It's like I don't feel different necessarily. Like I of course I feel a little caffeinated when I have the caffeine, but I'm not waking up with headaches. I don't need the coffee physically. It's literally an emotional support situation at this point. It's a ritual too, and that's like
So what are you trying to support emotionally with the drink that you can't handle without it?
who knows? Got
That's a good place to
got some work
start.
to do there. I think a lot of I know with like weed, it's loneliness. I've
Mm.
spent so much of my life in my perceived outlook of my life, like I feel like I spend a lot of time alone, and that's where my addiction or like my dependence on weed came from. And so that's been
How
since
does it help you reconnect and not feel lonely?
weed helps me just like be so like I'm just thinking so much when I smoke. Like the gears are constantly turning. I feel like other people it's more of like maybe a shut down thing, but for me it's a very much like I just have so much chitter chatter in my mind, and smoking kind of like gives me like a body calm, but then like I'm still very much able to be in my head and I'm okay with it. And it might not make sense because it's been for I graduated high school 8 years ago, so it's been like 10 years of doing that. And so that's my experience with it. And it's just always been that thing where at first it was a hand to mouth motion that literally filled my lungs. So filled like this space, which makes me feel whole, which makes me feel like it's like a hug, like me being crazy talking about this, but like that's my truth. And like that's how it started. And then it just became like my little buddy. And it just became like a way for me to feel like I'm alone, like I'm lonely, but I'm smoking, so I'm happy now. Like it's like this is my thing, and like I don't think there's anything wrong with smoking. I genuinely don't. I think it helps me in a lot of ways when I'm using it appropriately, but like you mentioned in our plant medicine episode, plant medicine will tell you when to take a fucking break. And I recently, I haven't smoked in a couple days because I started getting panic attacks. And it's more than just the weed. It's like other things that are happening in my life, plus the weed opening my eyes to, hey, you need to be in reality with this stuff for a little bit. You need to separate yourself from me from a little bit to work through this, to heal, instead of being in your healing addiction loop where you think that smoking weed helps you heal, because that's something I told myself too. I kept telling myself when I smoke weed, I do. I have all these amazing epiphanies. I'm very clear with myself. I'll go on walks and cry because I'm like, wow, like 5 seconds ago this wasn't in my brain, but now like I smoked and my neural pathways are, reconnecting different ways, just like we talked about in the plant medicine episode. But the plant medicine will tell you to chill the fuck out and go spend some time sober to work through it. And so, like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with smoking, but I had a friend ask me this once that was like, "Are you dependent on it?" And in this moment, I have been depending on it, and so I need to take a break. And I did 18 months without smoking, and like, so I know I'm not. That's again, like you said, addiction isn't really, you don't necessarily believe in addiction. I don't really either, because you would say I'm addicted until you saw me do 18 months without it, right?
Okay, okay. Well, okay. Let's say, let's say somebody's sitting across the table from Lindsay and myself, and I mean, I use marijuana every day. Okay. I would argue that somebody who takes SSRIs is addicted to the SSRIs because
Yeah.
the SSRIs are just band-aiding what it is that they need to be working through on the inside, which I'm not saying that I have an instant gratifiable answer or pathway for you. But I will say this, I do know how to get to where it is you're looking for without the medicine anymore.
Right.
But I've sat and done the work with it. And I'll say this even further to further even the conversation about weed comes from the planet. Okay, it grows in the ground. Um, And it is medicine. It is medicine. And I think that there's something to be said with this conversation that we don't have where we all know we all have these like not even contradicting things. We have these universal truths that we all walk around saying we believe in, but then somebody tries to throw it on the table as to why they're doing something and you're like, "No, plant medicine. It is medicine when it is intentionally used for that."
Yeah.
So when I use weed, it's because same thing. My thoughts are clearer. I actually use it as a signaling tuning fork because the person that I am, that I was programmed to be from a child to now, is just managed much more gracefully in that space.
Yes.
But to double down on what you said, if you're paying attention and you are I would say just being a human, you got a good head on your shoulders, you're doing your thing, you got a job, you don't sit around just drill farts in the
Right.
couch.
Right.
It is going to ask you to take a seat once in a while and spend time in reality with the certain things because if you're indulging too much in whatever it is that you're indulging in, it is going to press up against the rest of your life, either in a positive or in a redirective way. It's not just, we don't just sit around like Sally in the 90s commercials where we're deflated on the couch, because we smoke weed, okay? It's actually, we just live in a time where it's more accessible than it was before. We live in a time where not only do we live in a time, but Lindsay and I are, we have the luxury enough to be able to use it the way that we use it throughout our day. Not everybody gets to do that. And we just swim around in it more. So it's like, we're also not people from a health company pushing marijuana on people
Yeah.
trying to
No.
get sales doing stuff. It's like
No.
we use it. We've had bad moments with it. We've gone back to it. We've left it. We've put it down. Where I'm going with all this is the universal truth that we all talk about, and if it is true, why do we then get so rigid with this healing? And I would argue that this is what addiction is, but um if the only constant is change, then why am I not allowed to mess around with what helps me and what doesn't?
Mm.
Because what helped me when I was 5, sure as shit ain't gonna help me as a 34-year-old.
Yeah. And yeah, kind of what I want to touch on too with this is like, if you are in a healing addiction loop,
Mm.
a good sign of that is that you can't let go of whatever you've been using to heal. Like if I spent a couple weeks being like, I want to let this go. I want to let this go. I can't let this go. It's in my house. And then I would just end up picking it up, blah, 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 blah. I didn't want to tell anyone about it. That's when I really started being like, okay, girl, you have to do something about this. And it's weed is harmless if you're just smoking a little bit here and there like I am. I'm not, being a crazy person, okay? It's harmless. Making all these excuses for myself, and that's when that could be weed, that could be um the gym, that could be
Listen, food is a huge one. I know there's somebody listening that y'all struggle with food.
Yeah,
Luckily, I've never experienced that. I don't struggle with food. But if you struggle with the thing it is we need to survive,
that's tough.
and in a culture that has made it super palatable with no nutritional value, I see you. I mean, you're up against a lot.
It sucks. Yeah. I've definitely had that too. So that's something I worked through. And that's something that tracking my food helped me with
Hmm.
because I would binge eat when I was like lonely as well. Lonely's everybody, I have a problem with feeling lonely, okay? But
We all do. What did we talk about in the last episode?
Right.
We all need to belong.
Yeah. But yeah, with food, it's hard. Like you said, it's so accessible. It's legal. It's like there's so many different varieties of it. You can convince yourself. That's the crazy part is like you can convince yourself of anything. And something I heard, I don't know where I heard it, but this changed my life, is addiction will always show up as a solution.
Yes.
Addiction will always try to present itself as a solution for you. So that could be whatever it is for you. If there's something you know deep down you should let go or you need to take some space from, if you're trying to make excuses for it,
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that's what I did for a couple weeks, but now we're on the other side. So for now.
Well, and thank you for sharing that because part of the reason why we created this space for everybody and why everybody's listening is to be vulnerable and talk about things that we have struggled with because I hope somebody is in the phase of making excuses or almost feeling like they have to hide something because that also means that you can either step into that loop that you currently can't get out of even deeper, or it's an opportunity to just, you don't even have to step out of it, but to recognize it. Because I will say this to follow up to what she just said: whatever can be seen or spoken about no longer has power over you.
Mhm.
And that sounds so simple, but it's like the moment you're able to look at it, the moment you're able to be okay with the mess, the moment that you're okay with your own mess being you in front of you, will be also when the healing actually starts. And if you are in that space or you do find yourself making excuses for that, I think, as far as like the resources go, and if we're going to segue into that, we just talked a lot about being addicted to healing. Um, so, what does healing actually look like? What is it? What does the integration of what it is that we're talking about look like? And a big one, big one, we've already said it once before, is that most likely, not most likely, you will, and spirit, Holy Spirit, scripture, Bible, whatever it is that you talk about, will redirect you back to the self.
Mm.
You are always, 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 no matter what, 100% of the time, it's the liminal space between being born and when you die. We're alone when we get here. We're going to be alone when we get there. In the middle, we got all these other people we bump into. Just go back to you, man. I mean, wholeness and not chasing perfection is a big one for me too. I think we live in this world that expects integration through perfection, and then we avoid a lot of the healing because we're not ready, because we didn't do the thing, because I didn't meditate for my third time today for 15 minutes. It doesn't work like that. These people who try to shove it down your throat and they're like, you got to have this, you got to have that, you got to have this. I don't disagree with routine, but I don't agree with routine when it becomes rigid or a curriculum that overpowers everything else that goes on in your life.
Yeah. And consistency is what's important, right? So I want to touch on this. This is something I've been thinking about a lot the last couple of days. You can be consistent without being perfect. Perfect doesn't exist.
Yep.
Perfect
Yep.
does not exist anywhere, right? Depending on what you believe in, there might be one single person that was ever perfect, whatever. It doesn't exist here on earth. Like you can't be perfect. So consistency doesn't mean never missing the mark.
Right.
Consistency means that you get back on track towards it when you fall off ASAP. And I have so many people, especially in my job as a coach, that are like, I'm like, what's your biggest struggle? Well, I'm consistent sometimes.
That's not
That's
consistent
not
then.
consistency. No.
That's consistently inconsistent. And
Yeah.
if you're going to be consistent about anything, I mean, whatever. But
Like, good for you for hopping back on, but sweetie, you got to stay consistent even when you fuck up. You have to. Like, you have to stay consistent with like I'm saying, like you like I was saying before with like the whole when you have something you're using to heal, you should be able to step away from it and still feel like you're healing or that you're healed. But you should also have that consistent routine to step back into the things when you need it, right? It doesn't have to be every day, like Aisha said, meditate 3 times a day for 15 minutes. If you miss your one meditation in the morning because your alarm went off late or whatever, go do your two other meditations.
Well,
Why
but here's the other thing, though. Here's the other thing that I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
Okay.
If you're not giving yourself time to integrate the messages you received in that meditation, what is the point of the meditating to begin with? Because I'm somebody who is like, I used to feel bad that I wasn't sitting still for 15 minutes and not moving or whatever. I am just not built that way. My sitting still is these stupid ass zone 2 runs that I gotta that I have to consciously back off in my own way for me at the end of the day. So if you get so stuck on the action of healing, so it's what we're talking about right now, like meditation, if you're so stuck on that, you miss the mark of healing totally, which is fine. That's fine.
Hey.
But to be consistent with that, you have to give it space, or you have to allow for the opportunity of the lesson to present itself in order to live through it, to apply the integration from the message you received from the meditation to begin with. Does everybody see how
That's
stitched together this is?
And that's another like universal truth and like a million other things. Like no matter what you're looking at, like that's something like the surrender, the letting go, the healing is not always an act, right? You don't always have to be
Right.
doing something to heal. That's what I like what Nova's trying to say is like there's things you do and then there's things that you just don't do for a second so you can hear the message. And that's another I think a universal truth is like if you're constantly watering, I just saw these so I want to use this. If you're constantly watering your flowers, prodding at the soil and stuff, that shit's not going to grow. You have to water it and let it be for a second and then she's going to grow, right? And so it's a universal truth. It's just only man-made shit is constantly worked on and used. That, yeah, that's it. I could continue rambling, but
I want to believe that we all also offer help unsolicited because we all mean well and we all think that we have the best way to get to the thing it is that we got to get to. And what I will say with that is if someone resonates with you in a way that your body reacts to it, continue to follow that person. If it's something that you are just regurgitating because you read it or maybe it makes sense, um, after integration is embodiment, and embodiment is what allows you to live the thing it is that you talk about and heal about. And I think embodiment is the hardest part because embodiment means you take every single tool that you've ever developed to this point and you're not scared to bring it out if you need to. And most of the battles that I fight through that context are usually with myself. For example, back to the alcohol thing, since that was my thing that I struggled with. I would have little wins where like let's say at the time I was escaping my emotions that I never managed or looked at, so that's why I drank all the time. So let's say I'm having a partner in a romanticized context and they're not even a partner anymore, but a habit of mine would be to get really really drunk and then text you and then talk about all the things it is that I want to get off my chest. So there's a lot to work through in that scenario just all on its own. But one of the biggest wins I had ever had was waking up one night, allowing myself to have a good time the night before. This was before I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't be doing that either. But I woke up and I didn't text this person, which meant I stepped in front of it a little bit. But that's a little win. Now I look back at the behavior that I was having then compared to now, and I'm like, oh God, I would never even think about that now. But it has to start with small, tiny, teeny, tiny, tiny, tiny wins. Even if it's just you catching the thought of doing it. I mean, that's pretty amazing, actually. But if you can become your own observer to the point where a situation happens and you are reflective of your day, like I hope most of us are, then you'll be like, oh man, I did that thing today in that situation that I said I was going to stop doing. Just you saying it out loud and addressing it, even after it's happened, your body listens to that. And so you're going to have a better chance at stopping that cycle of being stuck
Yeah.
if you can just talk about it.
Yeah. I think too, to kind of like blend that together with the what's in my mind right now is like you can read personal development books, self-help books,
Mm,
whatever. And if you find yourself kind of just regurgitating it, but it's not actually being integrated into your life in a certain way. I just the what's coming to my mind is like in school where you would have to like read something and then put it in your own words. Like you had to
mm,
take
mhm,
it and put it into your own words so then that would file away in your brain because it's not going to necessarily you reading somebody else's words or hearing somebody else say something. Hearing it is a little different. I feel like hearing things for me at least is very prominent in my brain. But if you're reading a book, something that I think you should do is take that and then go talk about it with somebody else in your own words. Go write it down in your own words so that you can actually see it come to life. Because when you're doing that, you're going to like reflect on your day before, or you know, it'll come up in the future when you come to a situation that it's applicable to. And so I think that's like a really good tool to use is if you're reading all these self-help books or listening to whatever, go and put it into your own words. And then go and take it a step further and be like, when in my life would this have been good to use? Like,
mhm,
you're reading a book about relationships. This is something that came to my mind too earlier. Relationships. Even if you think the relationship ended because of the other person, or you think
mhm,
they're terrible, you think they whatever, blah, 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 there is still something you can learn about yourself from that relationship. And if you aren't, that could potentially be why you are not in a relationship now. That's not the only
mhm.
reason why, but I'm just
No, but it could be a big factor.
huge factor. So, say you're reading a book about relationships, instead of just reading the book and be like, okay, well, now I read the book, my next relationship will be better. Go apply it. Like literally, this is one thing that I took from schooling, the 16 years I was in school, is to then apply it to your own life. Go reflect, go look at that relationship, look at the first relationship tip it gave you. Where would that have been useful? How would have that changed a relationship? In the future, if something happens, how will you use that? That to me is like active healing rather than addiction healing, where you're just comfortable
Mhm.
reading these books to make yourself feel better. And I think that's uber, 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 uber important.
Yeah, yeah. I remember the first self-help book I read, I was 17, and The Secret had just been published. So it's at Target. It was, it was unlike any kind of self-help book you've ever read because it was all about positivity and reframing and different narratives and blah, blah, blah. So what I have discovered with all of that through my very intense use of ChatGPT and being a mirror is that all these self-help books, have you ever noticed how they're kind of like Russian roulette? Like one person is like, that really helped me. That was awesome. This was like one of the best books I've ever read. And then other people are like, That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That's so stupid. You can't just be positive in your life. So all these self-help books and these people that we listen to that like seemingly have it together, these are what are called and I don't know like what like realm of people speak like this, but they are fractal moments of alignment put into a book. Okay. So we've got all these people who have had these moments, like you, like myself. I would consider myself to be an aligned individual. Um, and when you get into it as deeply as I've gotten into it, you recognize that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't because of what you just talked about is missing. It's that active practice and actively applying what the book is saying. And sometimes we read the book and it makes sense logically, but our body hasn't caught up yet. Or just the opposite. You read something and maybe you respond and you cry, or your body feels something, but maybe you don't remember even the words that are in it. That's actually a thing because you literally don't, your brain doesn't have the logical capacity to understand what it just read. But your body knows the truth of the resonance of what it just read, but you don't really know how to explain it yet. So it's this weird miss. And that miss is the work, the integration, the application. It's not about just understanding, it's about understanding then how to apply it.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's cool because like each book you can me and you could read the same book and we could apply it to our lives completely differently. I could read a book that I read years ago when COVID was at its peak and I was still in college. I could read that now and I could be a completely different like way to apply it now. People say same thing about the Bible. You know, you read the Bible one year and you read the Bible the next year and those all those passages and whatever hit you
Well, why
different.
do you think there's been so many different versions written?
Yeah.
Because people evolve differently. Our cognitive thinking is different. We have to, storytelling, the storytelling has to be different. You look at how movies are made, in case anybody didn't know this. I mean, Lindsay and I are aware of this because we try to keep you guys engaged. But in the last like 15 to 20 years, I think they said, or no, 10, whatever the timeline is, I don't know. But the cuts in movies have gone from 10 to double that because they have to keep your attention in each scene that happens to be happening in the movie, or you will not stay in it.
Which I think is a good thing to know about our human brains now, because as much as I like to think I can focus and I can read and stuff, because I am chronically on social media because that is part of my job and I also have a shorter attention span. So
Yep.
you have to just kind of accept that about you. You can work on it, but if you are, say some of you might be listening and you're like, wow, I really wish I could read a personal development book, but I just do not have the attention span for that. Or, oh, wow, I wish I could. I'm hoping you guys can finish our episode, but maybe you can't. Accept that and do it in bite-sized pieces. Because guess what? In between those bite-sized pieces of your book, you read 2 pages a day. You listen to 5 minutes of this podcast at a time. In between, you're also integrating that space we were talking about. Let yourself have the time to digest it. Read a couple pages of the self-help book and then don't look at it for the rest of the week and really let it sit in because honestly, I don't think you should fly through a self-help book. I think if you're flying through a self-help book and you read it in one sitting, unless you are going back to, apply it specifically, did you really give it the space to settle in? So,
Or did what you read about or what you read about, does it actually land with you and do you actually believe in it? Because I'll tell you something right now. Being somebody who has to pay attention to spinning plates, and I gotta wait for a plate to fall off to find out what I'm actually interested in, what I'm not. Maybe the book isn't landing because that's not actually the direction you want to be taking. So
that's
don't force it.
yeah.
Find something else to listen to. Find something else that resonates. But I will say this, that can turn into a loop too. That can turn into an addiction too. I think really what we're saying is that healing is a mixed bag of self-awareness, integration or embodiment. Well, they're two different things, but for the sake of conversation, we'll just keep it the same. And what's the word? Moderation for all of it. Nobody's gonna sit here, nobody's gonna want to sit and listen to us if all we do is sit here and hammer into people what we think they should be doing or whatever. It's more like Where my life is going, it's like I sit around people now where we actually talk about our day and we talk about how could it have been better? How, what have you been doing to feel better about X? What have you been doing to for this or that or whatever it is? I think community integration, moderation, and invite that inner child to the god dang table, man. They want to do is sit there. That's it. And we all grow up thinking we got to be this suited up. I'm not saying don't be that.
We don't have to be, and you don't, and it even the people in the suits aren't prime, perfect, polished people. It's not,
Oh, yeah.
it's not, it's not about being perfect and polished. It's just about being your best self. And I actually had a client confessed to me that they were like worried about letting me down. And
Mm-hmm.
my response was the only way I could feel disappointed or let down by you is if you just give up. If you just quit trying to be better. That's the only thing that would hurt me. That's it. So we hope that this podcast just helps get you guys 1% better for you. It's not doing anything for us. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we just want to help you guys find out how to be a better you, how to be a more joyful you, how to feel more whole, how to follow your purpose, and how to feel like, you're moving forward because as much as like we don't want it to, life just moves forward. Like our
Yeah.
we are like she said with like earlier about our age kind of being in play. Like it's a truth that we are born and we die, and the purpose is just to try and get a little bit better.
A little bit better. And I will say this as somebody who's had some trying times in the last couple of weeks, I let perfectionism take over sometimes because that's just where I'm comfortable. And I had to get into this space that I will share, hoping somebody hears it. Um, I say this to myself on the daily now. Nobody expects me to be perfect, but they do expect me to be prepared and thorough.
Mhm.
If you're going to be successful and you're going to light any kind of fire under you, don't let it be perfection. Let it be preparedness and thoroughness. That doesn't mean you're perfect. That means that allows you to give 100% of whatever you've got that day. Because this healing journey, too, part of the healing is sitting in the hurt. And there's been a couple of days, a couple of weeks in the last like month where I'm like, if I do anything other than sit with this, I'm bypassing it. If I do anything other than just hold myself and the situation I am in for what it is, and I thank it for doing what it needed to do for me so that I may appreciate the next moment of joy more, then I want somebody to take that with them. At least in the space with me or us on this podcast, it's just be prepared for yourself and be thorough for yourself because that is action that distinguishes anxiety that then kind of starts to soften that loop that you're trying to get out of, and it just makes a little pinhole in the bag we're all stuck in. Like, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. I think if anybody is confused on where to start, if they maybe haven't dabbled in healing or they haven't had good experiences with what they've tried in the past, for me personally, like I said earlier, like Audible, podcast, things I can hear like somebody's actually talking to me is super, super helpful. And I'll just share that for personal development, I really like Ed Milet's podcast.
Mhm.
He's huge in the personal development space now, but I still feel like his messages are just extremely personal for some reason. He just has a way. That's why he's so big because he's so good. And so I would just recommend, like, I obviously hope our podcasts help people, but I listen to multiple podcasts. So if you are interested in another spot, I really do like Ed Milet's podcast. I don't know if you have any like healing or like development podcast or books you'd want to recommend to anybody.
Two that we've mentioned before. Um, they were like my original, my own personal like Bibles, I'll say. Um, because I guess I don't need to get into all that. Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. So we all deal with our subconscious thoughts, how we think, narratives, things like that. He was a doctor in like the 1970s. It's a pretty thick book. However, that's one of the books that I would recommend to anybody, especially if they're going to have a jumping off point. In the table of contents, you can literally, like, you could never have picked it up, and you could pick it up right now and be like, I want to work on sleeping. And there'll be, you just open it up to the page of contents, you go to sleeping, go to that page, and you can just pinpoint what you want to work on or look at. But it's also a good book just to read all the way through. And I like that book because it's the subconscious mind. So you have to live in it after you read it for a little bit to notice certain things, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And then I will blow this one up all day long, every day for the rest of my life because it was out of any book I've ever read. Excuse me. It is the most impactful when we talk about being redirected back to the self. And it is called A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. And again, it's what made me fall in love with scripture and the Bible because she takes the word from the Bible and delivers it in a way that is probably resonating with you, like Ed does, where you're like, yes, yes, yes. I've had to put this book down several times because I'm crying about all the love that it helps me remember about myself. And it has taken my breath away. And it has been like, holy crap, when I withdraw love and expansion from other people because I'm upset, that's actually love and expansion I am withdrawing from myself.
That's deep.
Hell yeah.
Say that like once an episode. That's deep.
So, I love rereading that book. Like I had a physical copy of it for such a long time that it literally broke off on the spine. So I only had sections of it that I would carry with me all the time. Everybody's like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Mind your business." Like, but that book, and then if I had to do one more, because this has to do with cycles and patterns, but this is on more of a meta objective level, is a book called The Tipping Point.
Oh, I like that one
It's
too.
a great book that talks about trends, but I think it's applicable here because there is a tipping point of anything that you get into. Like we're going to have a peak moment of certain things that we get into, which I don't even want to talk about it verbally because for some things it scares me and I'm like I don't even want to. Mortality has a lot to do with that. And I don't want to go there yet.
Interesting. For me, that book, what my main takeaway, like for me, I read a lot and I can't really tell you what the book was about, but I know what I
The
took from
tipping
it.
point?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
For me, that book, what I took away is that we will all come to our tipping point. We will put in our work and our work, if you keep pushing, you will hit your tipping point and your entire life will change. And that could be good or that could be bad. So you want your tipping point to, tip you the right way. But that's like I read that book and it was so, so good. And I'm sure I've learned other things from it that I just don't remember being from that book. But that was the biggest takeaway I had from it is like you will hit your tipping point. Just keep going.
Yeah, what scares me about that is the after the tipping point. I'm afraid of if if the point is the build to the climax, what's after the climax? I don't want to have
Every
peaked. I don't
everything
want to have
you
peaked.
everything you ever wanted is on the other side because like I said earlier with the pain and the trauma, like there will always be more. Like we live in a very like our world is spinning. Like our lives are constantly spinning and circular and it's always going. Like we there's going to be more pain, there's going to be more success, there's going to be more battles, there's going to be more mountains, there's going to be more valleys, there's always going to be more. And so allow yourself to tip. Allow yourself to tip so then you can do it again on your next le it's like leveling up in my mind. And like when I finally could accept that, and like I had mentioned, I think on another episode, is like once you can accept it, once you've gained the strength and the acceptance to allow yourself to get to that tipping point, and you've let go of fear, you get to level up again.
Hmm.
And and God, the universe will not give you what you cannot handle.
Hmm.
So you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. Like we were saying, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. You have to be willing to do things that make you nervous about what's on the other side. Because what's on the other side, once you're there, it never feels as crazy as it seemed before.
So do you know that because you've reached the other side of something that you've worked really hard on to be able to say that?
Kind of like I mentioned on the episode with Jody, like with my business, like I've been
Mm.
putting in hours and hours and hours and hours and days and years and years and years. And that tipping point where I had that somatic release of emotions and like just joy and like I had mentioned though beforehand, I was so scared and God would not give it to me until I was ready. And I know what I wasn't emotionally ready to be able to handle the clientele that I do now. I wasn't ready. So it wasn't my time, but I kept putting in the work to become more emotionally strong. I kept putting in the work to have systems in order to maintain the clientele that I do now. I kept putting in the work, kept putting in the work, blah, 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 blah. So when I was ready, because I was ready and I had been working on affirmations of acceptance, the tipping point was able to happen. And now when you're on the other side, you're like, oh, like I'm not
So let
the
me,
same person.
yeah, you are, but you're not. So let me
Right.
ask you this then, because what you just said kind of touches on being careful to not be addicted to the healing. Where did it go? So when you got to the point of somatic release, that was when, let's say, when God gave it to you. Did you know in that moment that you were ready, or did it only happen that you realized that you were ready after it had already happened?
Right. Like you, yes, like I didn't know when I would be ready, blah, blah, blah. Like you only know.
Just so everybody knows, she's not saying that she said that she was ready because she waited until she was ready, because that's one of the points. We don't, that's perfectionism. I wanted to point that out and catch that because it's contradictory to what we were just saying if you weren't trying to explain it the way that you were.
No, yeah,
Continue.
that's perfect. Yeah, like you can't, I couldn't wait around for, but that's just another universal truth. You can't just wait around for things to happen. You have to do the work to do it. You can't just wait around until you're ready.
That work is the process.
You have to get ready. It's like you can't just like wake up with your makeup on. You have to get ready for it and then you're ready to leave. Then you can whatever. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
yeah, and it is scary because I said this on an Instagram post the other day, like what are you scared of? Are you scared of more responsibility? Are you scared of losing everything that you had? Because that was me. Are you scared of losing everything that you just worked for? Are you scared of waking up and it all being a dream? I've had that.
Hmm. Oh yeah, big time.
What are what are you scared of? And you need to work on affirmations and you need to pray about it and you need to get that off your chest because you need to get ready. Because on the other side, it's not as scary as it seems because it's just you're on the same planet. Everything's the same. You know, you just have a little bit more responsibility or you have a little bit more of a workload. But guess what? It's like we've talked about with bandwidth. You just increase your bandwidth of how much you can handle. And there's no hurry. There's no hurry. You just have to continuously 1% better every day. That's what I like Ed Milet for too. He's one more day, like one day at a time, 1% better every day. That's all you have to worry about. And that 1% is so much easier than worrying about like 10 years from now, I want to like 10x my income or I want to blah. No, I can't think like that. That's
As
trauma.
many people as I work with who are 55 and older, okay, I work around a lot of people who are now in the phase of their life where they are losing people just to the natural effects of we're all going to die. And so we have our whole lives to get this right. And I think, don't get me twisted, okay? I'm on here and I'm all like, be chill. And I'm a workhorse, okay, when I want to get something done and when I want to do something. But if I am not an efficient workhorse, that means I'm forcing something or whatever. Where I'm going with this is we've got our whole lives to like figure it out. Luckily, I don't have any kids or anybody else or anything to worry about in my life, so I can be as messy as I want. And we've said this before, we've addressed this before. I understand constraints of other people's lives. I understand all of those things. But if you don't get on board with what it is you're supposed to be healing, I want everybody to know this. You're going to hand it to your kids.
Oh God.
Because if you don't figure it out, I am walking living proof of figuring out for her.
Yeah.
And and there's no disdain there. That is just a fact that I'm stating. That is a great example of a neutral statement from me. I didn't say that with any ill will or anything behind it. It was just people who experience trauma from childhood. It's trauma that that parent has just then gifted to that kid that they haven't figured out. And honestly, in a weird way to kind of disrupt everybody's normal thought process, this is so weird for me. Um, but I'm grateful for what happened to me, or I wouldn't be on this podcast.
Yeah. No, yeah, that I agree. I agree.
I'm grateful with the healing that I have had to drag myself through to sit here and try to explain, to have a podcast. All the turmoil that I was given as a child has now, this podcast is a byproduct of that.
Yeah. I think that's a
How's
good
that for a pretty perspective?
I think that's a good place to end. Thank you guys so much for listening. And to find more from us, you can find us on Instagram at prettyperspective_podcast and also on YouTube.
Before we get ready to sign off here, remember that you are the light and you bring the glow, and we are a pretty perspective
Where we bring the light to hard shit.
shit.